You were just north of Austin, just a little bit. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I see we have some people out there, and you've already started submitting questions and comments to our guests. And I want to just take a minute to introduce them and introduce you to our store if you don't know about us. My name is Jane Estes. I'm the general manager of Lark and Owl Booksellers and one of the co-founders of this bookstore, this independent bookstore just north of Austin. And Kristen Roundtree, one of our other co-founders and our marketing director, she's just off to the side, and she is the person who'll be answering some of your questions that you might need to know behind the scenes. So at Lark and Owl, our mission is to create an inviting space for our customers with community, conversation, and books. And tonight, our comfortable space is a virtual living room. And our guests tonight in our virtual living room are two authors who now have a New York Times best-selling book, What Makes a Marriage Last. Marlo Thomas is an award-winning actress, author, and activist whose body of work continues to impact American entertainment and culture. She's been honored with 4 Emmy Awards, the George Foster Peabody Award, a Golden Globe, a Grammy, and has been inducted into the Broadcasting Hall of Fame. In November of 2014, President Barack Obama awarded Marlo the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor a civilian can receive. And this is your 8th book, Marlo, correct?
Right.
And she is joined by Phil Donahue, who happens to be her husband, who is a writer, producer, journalist, and media pioneer who revolutionized the talk show format, ushering in a new era of broadcast journalism and television. The Donahue Show was honored with 20 Daytime Emmy Awards, and in 1996, the Daytime Emmys presented Phil with a Lifetime Achievement Award. For his contributions to television journalism, he's been inducted into the Academy of Television Arts and Science Hall of Fame and is the recipient of the George Foster Peabody Award. Also, you both have some of the same awards. That's amazing.
I know.
So welcome. Welcome to Texas, as it was.
What did you say?
Welcome to Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I wanted you to know this is not a virtual living room. This is our living room that we are now in. Our very
That's
own
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Well, because y'all kind of got shortchanged on a book tour this time around, right?
Yeah. But but I don't mind missing the airports. I mind missing seeing the bookstores. I love bookstores. I'm an English lit major as a kid, and so I do miss bookstores and the fun of meeting the people who come to the bookstores and who love books. That's something that I am sorry about. But I'm not sorry to miss the airports, not in this day and age.
Well, it sounds like you'd be a great bookseller, Marlo. So if you're ever in the area, come on by. We'll put you out on a shift at the cash wrap. How about?
I can do it. I can do it.
So we want to talk about this book today and a couple of other things as well, if you're game for that. This book was inspired, or you thought of this idea after some longtime friends divorced. Is that correct? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. Right. But I think mostly this book came about because we just celebrated our 40th anniversary, which is, I don't know how that happened so fast. For so many years, people have asked us, what's the secret sauce? You know, what is it that you do that made your marriage last? And we always shied away from it because, first of all, it seemed too personal. And second of all, we didn't know the answer. We thought, I don't know. We like each other. We love each other. We trust each other. We didn't know the real answer.
And Phil didn't want to do it.
That's right. And Phil didn't want to do it. That's for sure. Mr. Private. So anyway, when we decided to do this, he said to me, I'm not talking about our marriage. And so I said, okay. And we haven't been married for 40 years without my knowing the right thing to say, right? So, but when we went out and started interviewing people, it became, you did right away, right?
Well, yeah, I discovered that whenever I made a reference to our marriage, it seemed to open a big door for the guests. Right. And they started, it was really quite amazing. I mean, I was worried that this would be, like him I love him and he loves me, and all is well. But it was really quite candid, and it was a big surprise to me how wonderfully honest they were about things you wouldn't expect to be on the air or made public.
And I think that a couple of interviewers, reporters who've interviewed us, have said that they could have never gotten those kinds of stories from celebrities. They said the celebrities are so guarded, and we are, especially Phil, very guarded. And I think because we were there and they know that we respect our own privacy, that we would respect theirs. So they were much less guarded than they might have been. And they told us stuff that we certainly didn't know about. I mean, I didn't know that Jamie Lee Curtis had a drug problem. I didn't know that Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick lost all their money to Bernie Madoff. I didn't know that David Burka, Neil Patrick Harris's husband, had an alcohol problem. So people just told us everything. And what was interesting is that in these 40 couples that we chose, and we chose them because we admired them and they had long marriages, they had all these big challenges, that there wasn't a challenge you can imagine that any couple could come up against that isn't there. I mean, Jesse Jackson
had a child
with another woman.
Yeah, he was in California, and of course his headquarters is Chicago. But Jackie Jackson was really quite, she was fascinating. You know, she said, "He belongs to me." And when people ask her how many kids she has, she says, "Well, I have
5.
I have 5. The Reverend, as she calls him, the Reverend has 6. So
she is just a spitfire. I mean, she's great. And she said something interesting. She said, "This marriage is a test of my character." And meaning that she stuck with her marriage and made it work. And one of the thoughts that Phil and I had after we'd interviewed all these people is that what they all had in common was that they all really wanted the marriage to work, right?
Right. Yeah, that was common to all the interviews. They were committed to this union. And, the other thing that's common to it is there's no such thing as a marriage that sails along smooth seas with no distractions.
And they even went to marriage counseling. I mean, they did.
That's the act of love that impressed us.
They did everything to hang on to that marriage. So whatever it was, whether it was drug addiction or alcoholism or infidelity or loss of money or a sick child, Al Hunt and Judy Woodruff had 3 children, and their firstborn had spina bifida, which is a lifelong diagnosis. So Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan, 3 years into their marriage, Michael got the Parkinson's diagnosis, which is a lifelong disease. So all of these people, nobody knows when they're walking down the aisle what's going to come their way. And every one of these couples, like every couple in the world, gets hit with something they had no idea was going to happen. So when you say for better, for worse, for sick or poor, for richer, sicker health, or rich or poor, you are saying those words. But I wonder if we all really know that those are words that are going to come and hit us someday. And will we have the guts and the perseverance and the stick-to-itiveness to do it? And none of these couples with all of these challenges looked for the escape route. They all stuck with it, and you're always saying that, how many people get divorced? Half of us
get divorced. Right. So that's amazing when you think about it. We're what the Harvard people who study human behavior call imperfect pair bonders. So,
and we're not really set up to be monogamous. So that is a concept and a will that you bring to your marriage to say, okay, I'm not saying I'll never be tempted, but I am saying that I'm going to avoid that temptation. And most of these couples did, except for Jesse Jackson, and maybe others, but we never knew about it. But what's interesting is that a lot of people around 7, 8, 9, 10 years of marriage, a lot of people run out. They get scared that they don't have the gumption to face these hard issues. But if you say, come on, let's just dive into the deep end together. And when you do, you come out so much stronger.
Yeah.
You know, and Peter Herman, who's married to Mariska Hargitay, you know, said an interesting thing. He said, you know, if you get married thinking the other person is going to make you happy, you'll fail. The happiness is going to come from what you build together. And what you build together also has the strength and the steel and the love and the will that comes from not running to the exit sign when things get tough.
Right. Well, one thing I found so interesting in reading your book, and I read every single word and I loved it and enjoyed it. I thought it was funny and diverse and wise and poignant and charming. But I felt like I was listening in on a double date with very close friends in every single story. And some of those people are your very close friends, and some you didn't know. So who were some people that, I mean, were you surprised by some of the things that your good friends said, or some of the people that you didn't know as well?
I was surprised.
Yeah.
We started we'd walk in, and they kind of look at us with, where are you going with this? And
they're here.
And if we said anything personal about us, it like a big door opened, and it was like, I thought these interviews would last 25 minutes maybe. And what was
3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours? And we went to everybody's home. We didn't speak to anybody on the phone. We had decided from the very beginning that they'd all be in person, and we flew all over the country. We flew to LA and Chicago and Boston and Dallas and Austin and Atlanta. And we went to Toronto for Elton John and David Furnish. It was a double date. You're very, very perceptive. It was like a double date. We sat down, just two husband and wife with another husband and wife. And, you don't do that. When you go out with another couple, you don't talk about your marriage for 3 hours, right?
Right.
So there we were with one topic, marriage, our marriage, their marriage, marriage in general. And so in those 2.5, 3 hours, a lot was revealed. And we had the feeling that they understood that we were looking for the secret sauce. We wanted to pass it on. There are so many truths in life that each person has and each couple has. And so we were able to say, okay, let's pass what we know on. And if half of us are getting divorced in this country, let's help the other half not get divorced. And let's have some kind of a manual for young people about to get married, so they can look at it and say, oh, okay, well, if that happens, we could do that. And we realized early on that this was not going to be a how-to book. A how-to book could be like about that big. But our book is 600 pages because
it's heavy.
Chock full of stories.
Right.
It's not how to make a marriage work. It's what makes a marriage work. What is the key word? Don't you think, honey?
I do. And I was, you can't help it. Even I learned a lot of things during this experience. You get married in a cloud of lust, and it's so much fun. The white dress, the rice, the organ music, all your friends are there. And it's just a high that's very special.
And it's like kind of a anesthesia, right?
Yeah.
Nothing bad could ever happen.
Yeah, you forget about the worst.
Right. And then all of a sudden,
Kaboom.
The
Yeah.
better for worse, the richer for poor, the sickness and in health starts to become real. And all that lust and all that rice and everything dims to, whoa, this is actually real life. And you have to hang on to the lust and the rice and the good feelings throughout it. And that, I think, that is the challenge. And that is what makes it great. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we came away from this experience very hopeful about marriage is that all of these people went through the fire and came out the other end, and we could tell the way they looked at each other.
Right.
It was very sweet. I mean, Arlene and Alan Alda have been married 60 years, and you can see the love. I mean, not just the understanding, which is there, but real love, real gentleness, real sweetness, and interest in what the other one has to say, which is just so exciting to see that.
Well, what I thought it was so interesting, the format that you used, because it is storytelling. You're telling these people's stories with them and for them. And we really believe in that here at Lark and Owl. Is everybody has a story, and we want to connect people through their stories. We think that's how you change minds and hearts. And but you've used this format before, Marlo, in some of your other books, right? So the Growing Up Laughing and your Reinventing book, I Just Ain't Over Till It's Over. I love that.
Well, actually, the Right Words book was essays, which I did not, in other words, I wasn't in the essay. They did their essay or interviewed them, and it was their essay in their words. In Growing Up Laughing, they were like Q&As.
Yes.
This was the first time that what we did was a narrative with dialogue. It was a sort of a, what do you call that? A hybrid. It wasn't a Q&A, and it wasn't a storytelling. It was storytelling through Q&A and a narrative. And that's why I think you really feel that you, the reader, are getting a real piece of people's lives, because we describe what they look like, what they're saying, how they're looking, what their house is and all that. And then we break into dialogue. And we only break into dialogue when it's either very poignant or funny or just really interesting. And then we back out of it and tell story again. And we came to that really,
well, we
didn't know we were going to do that. We didn't know what we were going to do when we got the interviews back.
It was very
I found myself.
What'd you say?
I said it was very effective. I thought it was a great way to format that book.
Yeah, we didn't realize it till we got the transcript of the interview back, and as we looked at the transcript, we realized what was really rich to have in dialogue, and what really we wanted to tell that part of the story. What were you going to say, honey? I'm sorry.
I found myself staring at these celebrities. I mean, like I was behind a rope, and, a lot of things surprised me. For example, I couldn't get over how thin, not an ounce of extra weight on John McEnroe. And the same, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, well, you don't need to be a weightlifter to be a world-class tennis player. And the same with Sullenberger, the pilot who landed the plane in the Hudson River. Yeah. He's a rail. I mean, he has no tummy at all. and
they have great marriages. I was really interested in John McEnroe's marriage because I was such a fan of his when he was a tennis champ, and he'd go off on the umpire, and he'd be playing a great game of tennis, and then all of a sudden he'd get a bad call and he'd go crazy and get rude and screaming. And I said to him, I was such a fan of yours. And as you'd go toward the umpire, I'd go, no, Johnny, don't do it, don't, and he'd go off. And so we asked his wife, so, how do you deal with the temper? And she said, I'm the one that has the temper. He said, I can't believe it that I'm married to a woman where I have to say to her, could we just calm down and talk about this? And I thought that was so funny. Isn't that funny?
That is very funny. Well, could we? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like me and Phil. Phil's this great talk show host, but he doesn't really like to talk. Right? So people think, well, why isn't Phil talking? Well, he'd rather not. He'd rather ask the questions, right?
Well, she said, now come on, you've got to take part in this. You've got to don't just sit there. So, the show would start and I'd clear my throat and she would do 8 minutes. So, I admired her for it though, because say what you want about Marlo. She really cares. She gets all excited about everything.
But I talk a mile a minute, and Phil is more laid back. That's just who he is. And that's just who I am. And at first, when we were doing these interviews, I was a little intimidated because here he is, this master interviewer. I am not a master interviewer. I'm just a chatterbox. But he's a master interviewer. And I would say to him, you've got to take over. You don't have to wait for me. You're being respectful of me. You're the champ. So I think you were being so respectful because I'm not the master and you are the master, right?
Well, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. So one of our people in the audience wants to know, were there any couples you would like to have interviewed, but you didn't get a chance to?
Yeah, we really wanted to interview the Obamas and Laura and George Bush. We interviewed Rosalind and President Carter. And I really respect the marriages of those people. And also, I just thought it'd be fun to hear, what it was like to live in the White House and how their marriages changed from being, regular people to becoming, so scrutinized. But they didn't want to talk about their marriages. And that's their right. But I like them both. Laura Bush actually was in my Right Words book. And Michelle Obama tweeted on our anniversary and wished us a happy anniversary and said she, wished us luck with the book.
Maybe we could ask, would you mind opening the book to the first picture?
The first.
Right. It's a couple pages in.
It's Jimmy Carter.
Carter. Jimmy and Rosalind.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
I love
the 21 and
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are these two handsome people here.
19.
That's us. Yeah.
Yes.
She was 21 and 19. He was 21. She was 19.
Oh, I didn't know it was that.
Here are Jimmy and Rosalind.
Isn't that adorable? Gosh, I love that every couple gave us their wedding photo.
That was pretty cool.
It shows, the clothes of the time. And then on the end pages, when we were interviewing each couple, we took a selfie just because we wanted to have it. And then we decided to put them on the end pages. So it proves that we did every interview ourselves.
Yes, I love this. I thought it was very clever.
Some people have ghostwriters, but we didn't have a ghostwriter.
Yes. Well, I think you could tell that because a lot of us have heard y'all's voices for years. So that came through in each of the stories about each couple, that it was like I said, it was a conversation. I felt like I was eavesdropping on a conversation with good friends.
I'm so glad. Yeah.
Thank you.
So somebody else wants to know, how did you choose the couples for your book?
Well, what would you say, honey? We chose.
Well, we didn't want any year-long marriages, so that eliminated a lot of people. We wanted marriages that have lasted and that appeared to be on the way to long marriages.
And also we wanted a whole array of professions, from the President of the United States to a tennis champ, to comedians like Billy Crystal and Ray Romano, to actors like Alan Alda and Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick, newscasters like George Stephanopoulos. We wanted to have a whole, and of course, Judith Woodruff and Al Hunt. We wanted to have a whole array and see if if marriages changed with professions, or if they changed with religion. We have Jews and Christians and Muslims and Baptists. And we have white and black and Hispanic and Asian and Indian. So all different. And also we have same sex and opposite sex marriages. And it's interesting. Everything's the same.
Mhm.
Every couple, no matter their religion or their race or their sexual orientation,
Same thing.
same thing. Everybody wants a safe place, a person they can trust, a person they know has their back, a person that will be invested in their dreams the way they're invested in their own dreams, that they'll be heard. And there's all kinds of challenges in the career area. For example, Tony Shalhoub, who's so great in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and in Monk and great shows like that. Well, he's married to Brooke Adams, who was a very big star when they met. In fact, she was the star of Heidi Chronicles, and he had a featured part. And now he's the bigger star, and she has trouble getting work, as many women her age do, as I know of that. I know a lot about that. And so that's completely reversed itself. So you have all these different challenges about ups and downs of careers, and how do these couples work through that?
Mhm.
And then we also did a great personal story, honest story about jealousy.
Right.
The jealous person turned out to be,
You.
oh yeah, well me. Oh, there's that. Yeah.
Right. Well, you should talk about yourself first.
Well, Marlo did a movie with Chris Christopherson at the height of his fame and power.
And sexuality.
Yeah. And the movie included a love scene, that I had to watch. Lasted about 2.5 years. And, jealousy is, it'll drain you. It wears you out. Tell them a story about...
Mark Consuelos and Kelly Ripa. Mark was in Boston making a movie. Kelly was in New York, and it was before cell phones. So Mark couldn't reach Kelly all day. And finally he reached her, and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" She said, "Well, you're not here. I'm just going to clean the toilets, clean up the apartment," which he thought sounded fishy. So
to him.
So he jumped on a plane without telling her. He got to New York, and he said to the doorman, "Tell her there's flowers coming up." So there you go. Tell her.
He goes up. She's waiting at the door
For the flowers.
and he comes down the hallway, runs into the apartment right past her, looking for the tall, dark stranger who is probably hiding behind the drapes. This is what jealousy can do to you.
Right.
And he was so honest in telling. I admired him so much for telling the story.
Yeah, right.
Because I have to wonder how many other men, especially.
Yeah. I think men are more jealous.
I do too.
But when the men talked about it and how they had to get over it, and the women who had to live through it, it was vulnerable and funny, but it was honest.
Mhm.
He was a little bit red in the face as he said how he didn't trust her, and he got on the plane and snuck back without letting her know. And she said to him, "How many times you're going to do this when you're going to finally never catch me doing anything wrong?" And they're a great couple. They've been married, 28 years or so.
Yeah.
And they're a darling couple. We loved all the couples, and we've become friends with Kelly and Mark, and with several of the couples that we didn't know before, which was fun. We're very good friends with Arlene and Alan Alda and others, but it was fun to make new friends. I love Viola Davis and her husband, Julius Tennant. They're a great couple. And Viola said something that I thought was interesting. She said, "You go into marriage thinking, okay, this is going to be 50-50. But it's not. It's 100-100. You got to give everything,
Yeah.
both of you,
I
in
thought
order
that's
to.
brilliant. Yeah.
There's no holding back.
So another one of our viewers would like to know, is there something that you would want to say to all the newlyweds who are navigating their first year now? Any words of wisdom?
Well, I'll tell you mine, and then Phil can tell you his. But mine is something that Judith Viors, the children's writer, said, which I thought was really interesting. She said, no matter, and they've been married 60 years. She said, no matter how hard you try, you're never going to be him, and he's never going to be you. So take that as a given and try to accommodate all of the differences that each of you has. Try to see them as that's him or that's her, as opposed to saying, I'm going to change that about him, I'm going to change this about her. Just accommodate it. That person that you love, accommodate those differences and know that you're not going to become each other. And I think, who was it else? Viola said something like that too.
Viola Davis.
Yeah, she said something along those lines too about, she said, when you're not married, when you walk down the aisle after your wedding, that's not when you're really married. You're really married when you look across the breakfast table at your spouse and they do something that you just hate. You look at that person, you hate that thing that he does, whether it's slurping his soup or grinding his teeth or whatever it is, and you think, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to live with that. At that moment, when you say to yourself, I will live with it, I love him, I'll get over this, that's when you're really married. And it's true on every level. And what about you, honey?
Well, when you fall in love, make sure you're not married to the wedding.
Right.
A lot of people get married because of the excitement of the wedding, and not to mention the gifts that come in and that beautiful white dress. But that's a short term. That's as is the cloud of lust. That evaporates quickly too.
And Kevin Bacon talked about, well, it doesn't evaporate.
Well, that's true.
Let me tell you, newlyweds, it doesn't evaporate, especially if you marry a nice Irishman and an Italian girl. But I think Kevin Bacon talked about it too. He said they make such a big deal about the marriage and the wedding day. He said it's like a symbol of your life together. That's, don't make such a big deal. The hell with the wedding. Don't even plan a big wedding. Get married. The big thing is the life you have together. And a lot of people, once the excitement of the wedding is over and all that, that old song, Is This All There Is? People are looking for that kind of high, whether it's, as Phil said, the lust, whether it's the excitement of the party and the day that you're the king and queen of the universe. The real fun of marriage is climbing up that mountain together and seeing that you can do it. There's like nothing you can't get past together. That's the exciting part.
And of course, since we've married, I've stolen a lot of material from my father-in-law, especially Danny Thomas, who married Rosemarie Castanetti, speaking of Italian.
Right.
And her people came from Sicily. And he tells the story about standing at their wedding and saying, raising his glass, looking at his beautiful bride and saying, Rosie, I will love you always. I will love you forever. I will be faithful to you forever. I will never cheat on you. And he turned, and his father-in-law was sitting in the corner, and he said, the father-in-law looked at him and he said, that's a right. So he was faithful.
He got the message across. So did any couples have any advice for keeping their marriage happy and healthy when their children were younger? Did they look back and say things that might be helpful to people who are in that situation now?
Who said?
Well, I think the Gaineses.
Yeah, I say I love you.
You're right. Yeah, Bob Woodward and his wife say I love you every night and every morning to each other. But Chip and Joanna Gaines talked about that they went to a counselor before they got married. And the counselor said to them, one of the ways to have a happy marriage is instead of watching television, play cards together, sit and talk to each other, have dinner alone together when you have your children, take a date night, but play together. And I think that's one of the things that we have found from being quarantined together is that we're not going out to see friends. We're not going to restaurants. We're not going to the theater or the movies. So all we have is each other and the television set. So we've been playing card games and making popcorn and watching movies on television. We've been spending time together. I don't think we have talked to each other this much in, I don't know, 30 years, because usually, we're running off to meetings. This is the first time we've had 3 meals a day together. And that's one of the things that Chip and Joanna Gaines were saying, that their counselor said to them, take the time to be together. Don't watch TV, play games together. And I think that that's a very, very important part.
Well, and that
to know each other. Even when you play a game, we've been playing Spite and Malice that the Alders play, a double solitaire game. You learn about each other a lot when you play games together, and it's fun. It makes you laugh. It's fun.
Well, that answers one of the audience questions about what to do during the shelter in place when we're all kind of, stuck with each other and on top of each other, and maybe finding layers to our relationships that are unexpected, maybe. So that's great advice. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then one other question, from the audience member, after decades of being married, what was something you learned that you would not have learned in your early years of being married?
Well, I learned that being quarantined here with Marlo, I learned how she's a water bug. She turns on a dime. She can handle 2 or 3, the laptop, the phone, the computer, all at one time. And I guess I'm, call me stupid, which a number of people have.
No, they haven't.
I don't think that's true.
I'm trying to put a light on, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're able to do it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's called you stupid, Phil. They wouldn't admit to it.
All right. I don't know whether you need the light.
I'm going to put it on right now.
All right. She's going to put it on right now. There she goes.
Oh, look at your pretty living room. That's lovely. Well, would you mind, could we talk about a little bit about earlier in y'all's careers? So just for a minute. So I recently watched Mrs. America on Hulu. Have y'all seen that yet? About the docuseries with Cate Blanchett playing Phyllis Schlafly in the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment. And someone plays you, Phil, early on in that docuseries. And
I didn't see it. Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Somebody played you. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. What?
No, I'm waiting for you.
Okay. So what I was going to say is I was a small child, and I remember Phyllis Schlafly on your show. And I remember how I felt about that as a 10-year-old. And then this show just kind of validated those feelings of my 10-year-old self about that. But also, we were already in talks to see if it was going to be we could find a date to have this interview. So my ears perked up when you came on the screen in this series. And so have you seen that show? How do you feel about looking back at that time? What do you remember?
Well, I certainly remember Phyllis Schlafly.
Yeah.
And I remember what my brand new wife said when I booked Phyllis Schlafly.
The week of the vote for the ERA in Illinois, I was so upset with him. And I said to him, how could you book Phyllis Schlafly the week of the ERA vote in Illinois? Because I had been running all over the country trying to get the last state. We needed either Florida, Illinois, or Georgia. And Illinois was a big hope. And so I was really mad at him. And he said to me, if you don't understand why I have to book Phyllis Schlafly the week of the vote, then you don't understand what I do. And wow, that was such an awakening for me and a real turning point, for my understanding of what he did. Then, of course, that's what he had to do. And, I mean, I was not the producer of the Donahue show, and I never was, and never would be. But I saw this on a personal level. But of course, as a journalist, as a television journalist, who was really an ombudsman of the day, of course he had to put Phyllis Schlafly on. But it killed me that he did. But that was a turning point. I never said a word to him again about who he booked or who he didn't book, and all my friends would call me and say, "Oh, could you get Phil to have me on and sell my book?" And I went, "No, I'm out of that business right now. I'm going to save my marriage by not trying to tell Phil who to book."
That's smart.
That was a big turning point for us. That's what I thought of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So also in Mrs. America, you're mentioned, Marlo, and I went and looked this up because the character who's playing, the actor who's playing Gloria Steinem says, Marlo called and the proceeds from Free to Be You and Me are going to the Ms. Foundation. And that blew my mind. I did not know that. All these years of following you and following Gloria Steinem and what you all had done for women and this country and the world, that somehow that passed me by. And that's I think that's just a beautiful thing, because if you don't know what Free to Be You and Me is, you didn't grow up in the 70s, first of all, and second of all, you're missing out, because that was groundbreaking. And then to have the proceeds from that really groundbreaking record and show go to help people, it's just a beautiful full circle moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
That's an iconic television event.
Yes.
And we created it. Gloria and Letty Pogrebin, who's also in the book, and Pat Carbine, we created the Ms. Foundation together. They had the chronology of that a little mixed up. The truth is still the same. The money went to the Ms. Foundation, but we created the Ms. Foundation for women, just as I was about to do Free to Be, because I wanted a place right away to put that money that would help women and children. And that's been a great part of my life, that money went there.
And the attention that has been brought to Marlo because of that, and of course a lot of other things in her career. But so it makes it kind of tough on me, because when we go through an airport, for example, people knock me down to get to Marlo. And, and I stand there looking at my shoes. And finally somebody will recognize you and they say, "Oh, we like you too, Regis."
The studio audience likes that. Yeah. Well, I have to say, if I saw you in the airport, I would have to do a double take, because I wouldn't know which of you to talk to first, because you're equal in my mind in the impact you had on me and my socio-political beliefs. I'm not even kidding. I'm not exaggerating about this. Everybody I work with has been hearing this from me for 2 weeks now. So, but I do want to ask you, Phil, so if you could have a reboot of the Phil Donahue show for next week, for a week, say, because you probably don't want to commit all your time, but who would you want to interview?
Very easily answered. I would want Donald Trump. He was on the program on 3 different occasions. We have the tapes. But I think this is a very historic time for this nation, and he's at the center of it. And remember, it's not about popularity or how much you love him or anything else. It's about the impact of this event on this nation. And I understand.
Well, I think if you asked the questions, it would be way more interesting.
Well,
because you're a great journalist.
Be careful.
I think, no, I'm not putting anybody else down. I'm just saying that if you had Trump or Mitch McConnell or any of those people that we wonder about, you would get to the core of what their thinking is. And one of the things that was great about the Donahue show that no longer exists, which is why, Jane, you loved it so much, even as a kid, Phil used to have on one person for 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
In 1 hour, you can learn a lot about one person.
And you wanted to buy the book that one guest. You know,
That's
really,
right.
we were.
But, you know, now, today, Phil and I watch these talk shows, and he says it's like the Hollywood Squares. There's so many panels.
You got three faces up here, and then three faces down here, and somewhere in the middle is the host. You know, the technology is fabulous. I mean, I'm totally awed by what they're able to do. The Chiron, the text that's up there,
the graphics.
But it's almost like the technology is wagging the show. And I do wish they would maybe just, and even everybody talks fast now.
You have to talk fast because you're going to be done in 2 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a luxury.
Yeah.
You know, you go on the Today Show, you have 4 minutes. And in 4 minutes, you have everything that you've been talking to us about for an hour. And that's really hard. You can't get the feel of who we are or the feel of the people that we've spoken to. You can't do that in 4 minutes.
Right.
So they're at the disadvantage. Phil was at an advantage. His advantage was it was a time that did not have 1,000 channels, and people could turn you on as they did every day at 9 a.m. and sit down and have their coffee and watch a Donahue show for an hour and learn about one congressperson. You know, they don't do that today.
Or
and
one.
That's how we met. I go for an hour.
Well, can I tell you, I think I was 12 and I saw that episode when you were on, Marlo, and I saw you hold hands. I remember this. I'm not kidding you. That you held hands, and my 12-year-old brain was like, that's what it's like, you know, when to be romantic, you know, or what, I don't know what all I thought, but that stuck with me. And so when I said this is a full circle moment for me, it really is, because that was a magical moment for anybody who watched that. We could tell it was magical for you, even the 12-year-olds, you know. So.
That's so nice.
Well, it was
Phil's next door neighbor was his friend. Yeah, a married couple who lived next door to him were good friends of his, and the wife of the friend came over to his house and said, well, what was that all about? Do you remember what you said to her? She told me. She said, she's my fantasy woman.
Oh,
remember that?
That's adorable.
She's my fantasy woman. And then he turned his fantasy into reality.
Well, and Marlo, you've said in interviews that he was the whole package for you too, because he was very cute and attractive to you and very smart, and you hadn't really had that before in one person. So I think that's lovely.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know that it was possible to have a man in my life that was very smart, and I could keep up with and even maybe have to leap up to where he was. I could learn something from. That's very attractive, right? And that would be sexy to me. And, you know, when I was on his show, as he was talking, I was thinking, I really like his looks, and I really like his confidence, and I really like the way his brain works, and I really like him.
Did I look nice?
You look gorgeous. So that was the thing, you know, the looks, the confidence, the way the brain worked, and just I could feel that he was a member of my tribe, if you know what I mean. I understood who he was. That's a big thing, especially because he was from Cleveland and I was from Beverly Hills. But I think because my dad was from Toledo, he was exuding for me what I felt from my dad and my mother, who were from the Midwest, is that this was a same kind of value system, you know, and honesty and down-to-earthness that I didn't see in the men that I dated in Hollywood. It was a different feel. It was a different breed altogether. And it really attracted me. And that may not attract everybody. A lot of people may want a guy who they feel is more Hollywood and more glamorous. That's not what attracted me. What really pulled me in to him was his heart and his goodness and his sweetness.
Well, I was raised Catholic.
Like I was.
All the way through Notre Dame, 4 years at Notre Dame. And
12 years undergraduate.
Yeah. And when I saw Marlo in the green room, immediately, I mean, she was a impure thought.
I still am.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
And that is the secret sauce. Tell those newlyweds.
I don't know if we can top that. That might be the note to end on, maybe. But I wanted to just mention a couple of things before we let you go. One, I want to say a huge thank you. This was an honor and a pleasure. And if you're ever in Austin area, please come up and visit the bookstore. We'll give you a tour and we'll have a glass of wine. Okay.
We want to. For
Right.
sure.
Okay, good. And you may notice that there's a cake here. I told people on Facebook they'd find out why there was a cake. You tweeted a Mother's Day recipe, Marlo. This is your Marlo's Anytime cake. And my daughter Maeve made it today so that we could have it here. And we'll post that recipe up on our social media tomorrow or the next day.
That's a lemon cake. It's the best cake in the world.
Well,
I
if we
love
made
that.
two, I already tasted it. It's delicious. And the second thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is we're also going to put a donate button on our website for St. Jude Children's Research Children's Hospital in honor of you and your father and the great work that y'all do. And do you have anything that you think he would say about the state of healthcare in this country? Because he started that so people could take their sick children and they wouldn't have to pay a dime and they would get cutting edge health care.
I think one of the things of which I am so proud is that not only did my father want to be sure that every single child had the same first-class care, no matter their race or their religion or their ability to pay, because nobody pays at St. Jude. But on top of all that, my father put it in Memphis, Tennessee, and it was the first totally integrated hospital in the South. And of that, I am so proud, because right now, when we're living at a time where we're so divided and frightened of each other and what's going on, he really did lead the way to say that all children are equal and all children must be taken care of. And he created this fully integrated hospital right in the middle of the South in 1962. That was pretty.
At our wedding, Danny Thomas raised his wine glass and he said, "I haven't lost a daughter, I've gained a fundraiser." So, it was somewhere during the reception, I realized that I had just married a hospital.
And he has. My father was right. Phil has been a great fundraiser because he's such a great speaker. So he's been very, very helpful in us raising money, because nobody at St. Jude pays. And so if you don't have any paying customers, you have to raise a lot of money from the public. So I'm so grateful that you brought it up. I'm so proud of St. Jude and so proud of the work we do there. So thank you, Jane. That's very kind of you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And can we just say thank you again? And it's been a treat for all of us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy our book. Hope you enjoy
Yes,
it.
everybody read this. It's fabulous. Whether you're married or not, read it. It's fabulous.
Absolutely.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, honey.
Let's see. How do we... Yeah.